now it's interesting that the word in Arabic for home is maskan, which is the place of sakina. And sakina means, you have harakat and sakanat. You have movements and stillness. And sakina is stillness. So sakana means to become still. Sakanat jawarihuhu. All of his limbs became still. Like in the prayer, it says that the Prophet ﷺ, when he made his takbir, then all of his limbs sakanat. They became still. So sakina is about stillness. It's about tranquility. And so the turbulence that the soul has, what we're really looking for in the world is sakina. And this is what in the Hebrews call Shekinah. That was what was in the ark. Right? The tabut is the Shekinah. That's what God gave them. That was something they actually carried around physically in the world. They had the Shekinah. And that's, Sakina is from Allah. This is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives. And that is what this is about. The whole world is a search for sakina. And the thing about entering paradise, what happens when they enter it? They just start saying salam, salam, over and over again. That's the first state of coming into paradise. It's peace. And that's what, qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. This is a word, salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. When they enter into paradise, they get this sudden, intense peace. And it's what they've been looking for all of their lives. And so they just start repeating it over and over again. And there's a tradition that says for 3 days, that's all they can say. They can't talk. They just say salam, which is a name of Allah as well. And when it's about Allah, it's about wholeness, that Allah is not compartmentalized. Allah is not made up of components. So peace is about wholeness. So as long as you're in the world, you're in the realm of separation. And the thing about a male and a female, when they come together, there's a wholeness that's achieved. And this is why there's a sakina that occurs at the physical level. And that desire is there. It's a very intense desire that human beings have, this desire for wholeness. And that's why, because we've been split from each other, the coming together it's almost a taste of paradise. And that's what Imam al-Ghazali says, is that it's actually a taste of paradise, because you're achieving that wholeness that you're lacking in your life. And that's what the mate does. I mean, that's what's supposed to, that's best case scenario. But that's also important too. All those problems are also important, because you're not ever meant to be perfect here. Muslims have to give up the idea of achieving this perfect state here, because Allah won't let it happen. Allah will not let that happen. As long as we're in the world, there's problems. That is the nature of the world. It will never change. It's always been like that. It will always be like that. What then becomes the challenge is how to respond accordingly to the difficulties of the world. That's the real challenge. The challenge is not eliminating the obstacles of the world, because you eliminate one and Allah brings others in its place. That is the nature of the world. But it's not meant to be torture either. I mean, we do a lot of mucking up that is unnecessary. And that has to do with rebellion and human nature also. This idea of creating from amongst you these لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهِ وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. The fact that Allah has used two terms here. One of them is muwadda and the other is rahmah, love and mercy. Because, one would think that you could just say muwadda, and one would think that you could say rahmah and it would be, but it's not the same. One of the commentators mentioned about this muwadda, which is really interesting to me, is he said the muwadda is the selfish component. That it's what you get out of the relationship, and the rahmah is what you put into the relationship. That's an early commentary. That the mawadda is what you get out of it. In other words, there's love. That's what you're getting from that person, is the love. But the rahmah is the reciprocation. That's the mercy, because it's a punishment if there's only love on one side. That is an adab. I mean, that is punishment. When it's reciprocated, and that's what the rahmah is the reciprocation. But there's another also really interesting element to this, because one of the things that feminists say, which is very interesting, there's a feminist theory about love, which is love is what men give to women, and in return, women surrender power, prestige, all of the things that men have, that is the domain of men, that love is what they are given as the bribe to give up everything that they're giving up in this hierarchical relationship, which is very interesting. It's an interesting idea. But the thing about it is that part of the secret of the woman is the rahmah. Because this relates etymologically to what a woman is. The only essential difference between a male and a female, it's not the private parts, because both the male and the female share that. It's the womb. I mean, that's the essential difference, is the womb. They have everything that we have, but we don't have everything that they have. The component that they have that we don't have is the womb. And the womb is the connection to the earth. And that's why the process that the woman goes through, it's more difficult for women to become abstracted because of the nature of a cycle. A monthly cycle connects a woman to the earth in a way that a man can become easily disconnected. I mean, this is really important distinction. But what comes out of the womb, the rahim, is rahmah. And that is why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created us from one soul, and then He said, خَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and He made from it its mate, and then He said, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَالنِّسَاءَ, and He has dispersed in the world from those two initial many men and many women. And then Allah says, so have taqwa of Allah. Have this taqwa, الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ, and also have taqwa of the arham, which is indicative of really what taqwa is. In other words, taqwa is about protecting, guarding. What it means is protect yourself with your Lord. Guard yourself, be in this state, a protective state with your Lord by not being in rebellion, but also protect those kinship bonds, because there's nothing more beloved to Allah after His unity in His servant than filial piety. When Allah is telling us that He created us to worship Him, He says, Anashkur li wa li walidayk, that you show gratitude towards me and to your two parents. So the first manifestation of your gratitude to Allah is being grateful to your parents, which is filial piety. And that's at the essence, at the root of really what this is all about. And that muwaddatan wa rahma, inna fi dhalika la ayatin liqawmin yatafakkarun. This is a sign for people that are reflecting. If you're not reflecting, it's not a sign. And tafakkur is literally, it's interesting that fakara, which is to reflect, is related to kafara. Right? There's an ishtiqaq, there's a relationship between rejection and reflection. Right? If you're not reflecting, you're rejecting. I mean, if you're not in a state of reflecting on the signs of Allah, you'll fall into this state of rejecting the signs of Allah. So it needs tafakkur. And tafakkur in Arabic is from tafa'ul, which means to work. It's hard. It's takalluf. It takes effort. We like to go to sleep. I mean, that's human nature. And He's going to say that right after this, right? وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ مَنَامُكُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. From amongst His signs is that you're all walking around sleepwalking. Not just in the nighttime, but in the daytime as well. That you're sleeping in the day and the night. And that is a sign of Allah.